Gold, the cursed metal. Friends have been betrayed, cities burned, and souls sold, all for its sake. We're conditioned to believe fairy tales are safe havens, a world of sunshine and rainbows where good always triumphs and villains are just laughable losers. But what if I told you the story of Rumpelstiltskin isn't fiction, but a cryptic protocol of a real deal with the devil? Forget the Disney-fied version. Today, we are cracking open one of the most disturbing files in the Brothers Grimm archive. We're going to talk about a creature whose name is best left unspoken, about a contract more terrifying than a death sentence, and about greed that turns a human into a beast. Buckle up. We're diving into a real investigation. Everyone knows the premise: the miller's daughter, straw, gold, and a weird little dwarf. But let's take off the rose-colored glasses and look at this plot through the eyes of a crime scene investigator. In the Brothers Grimm's very first drafts from 1812, this story reads like a script for an R-rated horror movie. There was no fairy magic here. There was cold calculation, blackmail, and absolute pitch-black despair. The setting: medieval Europe, a time when a human life was worth less than a rusty nail. This entire nightmare is triggered not by magic, but by stupid human vanity. The girl's father, an ordinary miller, decides to flex in front of the king. Desperate to boost his status, he blurts out the first thing that pops into his head: "My daughter can spin straw into gold." Just think about that. A father, her own flesh and blood, essentially signs his daughter's death warrant for a fleeting moment of clout. He throws her into the meat grinder of royal greed. And the king? He's not the benevolent ruler from the cartoons. He is a maniac obsessed with money. Hearing about this golden goose, he doesn't ask for a magic trick. He acts like a prison warden. He seizes the girl, locks her in a stone tower stuffed with dry straw, sets up a spinning wheel, and issues an ultimatum. If this straw isn't gold by morning, you die. That's it. No options. Either an impossible miracle or execution at dawn. Imagine yourself in her shoes, betrayed by your father, locked up by a tyrant. You are alone in a dark cell, and you know this is your last night on Earth. And then, when panic hits its peak, when her sanity is nearly shattered, in that locked cell appears it. In the original, this isn't some jolly garden gnome with a pointy hat. It is a little man with an inhuman aura, an entity that arrives at the scent of fear, a crossroads demon, a lowly imp, a familiar. Call it what you want. The essence is the same. He isn't here to save, he is here to buy. This is a classic marketplace of souls, and the bidding starts right now. "What will you give me if I do the work for you?" the creature asks. The girl, sobbing, hands over her necklace. This is crucial. She trades a material value. The dwarf sits at the wheel, and that sound, whir, 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 becomes the soundtrack to her madness. 3 pulls, and the bobbin is full of gold. By morning, all the straw has turned into pure metal. This isn't alchemy. This is something unnatural. Gold created from dead grass by the hands of a demon. In the morning, the king sees mountains of gold. Do you think he lets the prisoner go? Not a chance. Greed is a drug. He needs more. The dose is increased. The girl is locked in a bigger room. More straw, the same death threat. Another night, more tears, and another visit from the nocturnal guest. This time, the payment is a ring, a symbol of fate, a symbol of identity. She gives away the last thing she has. The third night becomes fatal. The king goes completely off the rails. He promises to marry the miller's daughter if she succeeds a third time. It's absurd. He is ready to make a queen out of someone he planned to execute tomorrow, purely for the cash. But the girl has nothing left. Her pockets are empty. Her soul is empty. And then the creature names the true price, a price that makes your blood run cold. "Promise me your firstborn." Why a child? Why does a powerful spirit need a human infant? In ancient dark cults, a baby is the purest sacrifice, a source of colossal energy. Or perhaps he needs a vessel to inhabit a human form from birth. Cornered and desperate, the girl agrees. She doesn't believe she'll become queen. She doesn't believe she'll survive the night. In a state of shock, people will sign anything. The word is given. The deal is sealed. Morning comes, the king gets his gold, and shockingly, he keeps his promise. The wedding, the crown, the luxury. The former prisoner becomes queen. A happy ending, right? Like hell it is. This is just the opening act of a true thriller, because debts to the other side are never written off, and the collectors from hell always come back for what's theirs. A year passes. The queen has a child. She relaxes, forgetting that terrible night like a bad dream. But one day, the nursery door creaks open. He is back. Not for gold. He has come to collect a living soul as per the contract. And the horror of the situation wasn't even his appearance, but the realization she allowed this. She sold her own child. But the creature, reveling in her grief, offers to play one last game, a survival game. She has 3 days. 3 days to guess his name. If she fails, the child disappears forever. 3 days. 72 hours. That is exactly how much time separates a young mother from losing the most precious thing she has. And this isn't just a fairy tale condition. It is sophisticated psychological torture. The creature knows there are thousands, millions of names in the world. Guessing the one true name by brute force is like trying to crack a password to a stranger's smartphone with infinite attempts but a 3-day time limit. Mathematically, it's impossible. The odds are 0. And the dwarf knows it perfectly well. He isn't giving her a chance at salvation. He is just dragging out the pleasure of his victory, savoring the victim's panic like a predator playing with its food before the final bite. The queen, realizing she can't handle this alone, activates what we'd call today state resources. She sends messengers to every corner of the kingdom. The mission is simple, yet insane. Collect every possible name, nickname, and alias that exists in this world. This is no longer just a story, it's a massive search operation. Messengers interrogate peasants, scour church registries, and record the names of foreigners. The palace turns into an intelligence center flooded with terabytes of useless data. But let's pause and ask the question, why a name? Why does knowing the name destroy this creature's power? Here, we touch upon a fundamental law of ancient magic found in almost every culture. From ancient Egypt to Siberian shamanism. A name isn't just a collection of sounds, it is the essence of a thing. It is its source code. The ancients believed, if you know the true name of a demon, you gain absolute authority over it. You can summon it, banish it, or destroy it. By hiding his name, Rumpelstiltskin hides his vulnerability. He is invincible as long as he is anonymous. This is the classic behavior of a trickster. A being that lives outside the rules but is terrified of being exposed. Day 1 arrives. Evening. The creature appears in the queen's chambers. Pay attention to his behavior. He isn't just waiting for an answer, he is mocking her. The queen starts listing standard names. Casper, Melchior, Balthazar. These are the names of the biblical magi, symbols of holiness and wisdom. She tries to hit him with the sacred, but the creature just laughs. Holiness doesn't touch him. No, that is not my name. Every no sounds like a hammer striking a coffin nail. Round 1 is lost. Day 2. The tension hits the red line. Messengers return empty-handed or with lists that lead nowhere. The queen changes tactics. If holy names don't work, maybe descriptive ones will? She starts going through nicknames that sound like insults for freaks. Maybe your name is Short Ribs or Sheepshanks? Or lace leg? She tries to humiliate him, to name him by his physical traits, hoping one of these slurs hits his true essence. But the dwarf remains unfazed. His armor is impenetrable. He knows victory is already in his pocket. And while hysteria reigns in the palace, an event occurs in a distant forest that changes everything. One of the messengers, the one who wandered furthest, finds himself in a place folklore calls a liminal space. The boundary between worlds, where the forest gets too thick, where birds don't sing, and the air feels dense and sticky. He sees the light of a fire. But this isn't the cozy campfire of a traveler. This is a ritual fire. The messenger hides behind the bushes and sees a scene that would make any normal person's hair stand on end. Dancing around the fire is that very little man. But he isn't just dancing, he is performing an ecstatic ritual. He hops on one leg, in ancient traditions, a sign of connection to the underworld, a mark of an unclean spirit. And in a burst of triumph, convinced no one can hear him, he shouts out what should have remained a secret forever. He sings a song. The song is a genre of its own in folklore forensics. Criminals often expose themselves out of vanity. They just have to brag about their genius plan. Today I bake, tomorrow I brew, the next I'll have the young queen's child. Ha, glad am I that no one knew, that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled. Rumpelstiltskin. What kind of word is that? Let's analyze it like evidence in a lab. In German, Rumpel means to rattle, to rumble, to make noise. It was often used to describe a poltergeist, a noisy spirit scaring people in their homes. Stills is an archaic word for a stilt, a post, or a leg. And the suffix chen is a diminutive. Literally, it translates to little rattlestilt or noisy dwarf on stilts. But there is a creepier version. In the 16th century, there was a game called Rumpelspiel, a gambling game played for money. And Rumpelstilts was the name of a figure, a monster used to scare children. So, essentially, his name translates as Little Gambling Demon. This completely changes the context. He isn't just a wizard. He is the embodiment of gambling, risk, and fatal loss. He is the spirit that pushes a player to bet everything when the odds are gone, the one who feeds on human stupidity and greed. Hearing this name, the messenger realizes he is holding a nuclear launch code. He races back to the palace. Picture the scene. Night, an exhausted horse, a man bursting into the queen's chambers with news that could save the heir's life. Day 3, the finale. The creature comes for his prize. Metaphorically speaking, he's already brought a body bag for the child. He is 100% confident. He asks, "Well, Mistress Queen, what is my name?" The queen, gathering all her will, begins the game. She doesn't say the name immediately. She plays with him like a cat with a mouse, reflecting his own sadism back at him. "Is your name Kuntz?" "No." "Is your name Heinz?" "No." The dwarf's eyes burn with the fire of victory. He is already reaching his hands toward the cradle. And then she speaks. "Then perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." In that moment, an explosion occurs. Not physical, but mental. The mask falls. The demon is exposed. He has been named. His code is hacked. He loses his anonymity and thus his power over the situation. But what happens next varies in different versions, and this is where we get to the juiciest part of our investigation. In the children's version, he just stomps his foot and runs away. But we know that in the Brothers Grimm's original texts, it ended much, much bloodier. And this ending opens our eyes to the creature's true nature. Rumpelstiltskin's reaction to exposure isn't just the resentment of a loser. It is the agony of a creature forcibly dragged into the light. In a fit of rage, he screams, "The devil told you that! The devil himself!" Notice, he doesn't blame spies or luck. He mentions the devil. This is a direct reference to the fact that he is part of the infernal hierarchy and believes only supreme evil could have betrayed his secret. But the most terrifying part happens a second later. In the 1857 version, which the Grimms made slightly more literary but no less brutal, the dwarf, in a fit of madness, stomps his right foot so hard he plunges into the earth up to his waist. And then he grabs his left leg with both hands and, in blind fury, tears himself in half. Just imagine that image. A creature ripping itself in two right in the nursery, in front of a young mother and an infant. Blood, guts, a scream echoing into the abyss. Why such grotesque imagery? Why self-destruction? Psychologists would say it's a symbol of a personality disintegrating, unable to survive the collapse of its narcissism. But mystics see something else. By tearing himself in half, he released two entities. Or perhaps he returned to the world he came from in the fastest, most painful way possible. However, the story doesn't end there. We've dissected the plot, but we haven't answered the main question. Why does this fairy tale exist at all? What real historical horror is encoded in the image of a gold-spinning dwarf? To understand this, we need to transport ourselves from the world of fairy tales to the real economy of medieval Europe. And believe me, The truth about who the gold spinners were and who the little people in the mines were will turn out to be scarier than any demon. Because Rumpelstiltskin isn't just a myth. He is the collective trauma of an entire generation. We left our anti-hero in a pool of his own blood, torn in two. But if you think the horror ends there, you don't know history. Rumpelstiltskin's self-destruction is just the tip of the iceberg. Now that the mystical fog is cleared, let's descend into the real, dirty, and brutal history of medieval Europe that spawned this nightmare. And believe me, the truth about little men and golden yarn is scarier than any demon because it's not about magic. It's about real people. It's about slavery, poison, and genetic mutations. Let's start with Rumpelstiltskin's image. Why a dwarf? Why does he live in the deep woods, or, in some versions, a cave? The answer lies in geography. The Grimm tales are a product of German culture, and Germany was the center of European mining for centuries. The Harz Mountains, the Ore Mountains, these places were riddled with mines. And who worked in these mines in the Middle Ages? Here comes the brutal reality. Narrow tunnels, low ceilings. A grown man couldn't turn around in there. So mine owners used two types of labor: children or adults with stunted growth. These people lived underground for years, breathing heavy metal dust, never seeing the sun. Their skin turned gray, their spines curved, and their personalities warped from constant pain and social isolation. Folklore called them kobolds, or knockers, from the sound of the pickaxe. They were the guardians of the underground, the ones who knew where the gold lay. Recognize the profile? Our Rumpelstiltskin is a collective image of the outcast miner. But why is he so malevolent? Why does he demand children? Here we hit the medical side of things. Medieval mines were toxic waste dumps. Arsenic, lead, mercury. Chronic mercury poisoning causes severe psychiatric disorders, tremors, remember his name, the rattling stilt, the twitching one. Fits of uncontrollable rage and paranoia. In England, they called it Mad Hatter disease, but in Germany, it was the curse of the dwarves. Rumpelstiltskin isn't just an evil spirit. He is a deeply sick human being, poisoned by heavy metals, whose sanity disintegrated long before he tore his body apart. Now let's talk about straw into gold. A beautiful metaphor, right? But economic historians see a different subtext. In those days, spinning wasn't a hobby for grandmas. It was hard labor that held the economy together. Women spun for 14 to 16 hours a day. In closed, stuffy rooms, by the dim light of a torch. Do you know what spinning rooms or spinstube were? They weren't cozy knitting circles. They were legitimate sweatshops where girls were worked to the bone. The phrase spinning gold in the slang of that era could mean generating excess profit for the master. The miller, the father, and the king, the husband, are two slave drivers. One sells his daughter as a production asset, the other exploits her to death. The girl is locked in a tower. In reality, girls like her were locked in workhouses. The threat, spin or die, is not an allegory. If you don't meet the quota, you don't eat. You starve. And then our savior appears. Who is he in this economic scheme? He is a usurer, a shadow banker, a lender of last resort. Look at the dynamic of their relationship. The girl needs to meet an impossible plan. She is in a panic. A man appears and says, "I'll do it for you, but you will owe me." This is a classic debt bondage scheme. First, you give up a necklace, liquid assets. Then a ring, real estate, status. And when you run out of money, you mortgage your future, your child. Rumpelstiltskin is the embodiment of predatory lending. He exploits the victim's hopeless situation to enforce a slavery contract. In medieval society, where debtors could be thrown into a pit or sold into slavery, the figure of such a helper evoked primal terror. He is scarier than the king because the king will just kill you, but the usurer will take everything, including your lineage. Speaking of the child, why does he want it? The sacrifice theory works for mysticism, but there is a more grounded, biological theory. Let's go back to our minors and outcasts. People with genetic deformities, dwarfs, workers poisoned by ore. They were excluded from society. They had no chance at a normal family. No woman would willingly marry a forest freak. The only way to continue the bloodline or get an heir was to steal a healthy child. European folklore is full of the terrifying myth of changelings. People believed that underground dwellers stole healthy human babies and replaced them with their own sick, screaming, deformed children, which was often how people explained autism or Down syndrome in ignorant times. Rumpelstiltskin doesn't just want to take the child. He wants to make a trade. He wants to steal a future he was denied. This is the tragedy of a creature that understands its own defectiveness and tries to compensate for it in the most monstrous way possible, by stealing someone else's life. And now, remember the finale. The queen guesses the name, she breaks the contract. Why does he freak out? Why does he scream that the devil told you? Because in a world of secret societies, guilds, and criminal structures, a name is the key to safety. If you know the usurer's name, you can report him to the authorities. In those times, witchcraft and illegal financial operations were punishable by the stake. By naming him, the queen is essentially signing his arrest warrant. He isn't destroyed by magic. He is destroyed by doxing. He realizes they are coming for him. His hysteria is the fear of real execution. But there is one more layer, the deepest one, psychoanalysis. Some researchers believe that Rumpelstiltskin never existed, that this whole story is the delusion of the miller's daughter herself. Picture it. Extreme stress, the threat of death, isolation in a tower, the monotonous sound of the spinning wheel, toxic fumes from the straw, which often harbored ergot, a fungus that causes powerful hallucinations similar to LSD. Maybe the little man is her alter ego, the dark side of her own personality that wakes up in a critical moment to do what the good girl cannot. She spins the gold herself, falling into a trance, but her psyche cannot accept this fact, so she projects her abilities onto an imaginary helper. She isn't selling the child to a dwarf, but to her own depression, her own fear that she won't cope with motherhood. And when she names him in the end, she is simply accepting her shadow side, integrating it, and healing. Sound like the plot of a psychological thriller? Absolutely. But historical chronicles throw facts at us that make us doubt this is just a hallucination. In 17th century archives, there are records of trials where people claim to have made deals with earth spirits for riches. These people were tortured, and under torture, they described creatures suspiciously similar to our hero. Small stature, immense strength, a love for gold, and an absolute intolerance for being called by their names. So we've scraped off the fairy tale gilding and exposed the rotting wood of reality beneath. Miners poisoned by mercury, predatory loans, and hallucinations fueled by ergot fungus. But if you think our investigation ends there, you are missing the most crucial, cynical detail of this story. The detail that flips everything upside down and turns a happy ending into a moral catastrophe. Look at this story soberly. Who is the real villain here? The miller? Absolutely. A liar and a trafficker of his own daughter. The king? A total tyrant willing to execute innocence for cash. But what about the queen herself? We are used to seeing her as the victim, the poor girl backed into a corner. But let's face the truth. In the finale, she doesn't run from her abuser husband. She doesn't take the child and vanish into the mist. She stays. She rules hand in hand with a man who threatened her with a painful death for 3 nights straight. This isn't just Stockholm Syndrome anymore. This is cold calculation. She accepted the rules of the game. She became part of the system. She became exactly what she feared. Now, look at Rumpelstiltskin. Yes, he is creepy. Yes, he demands a child. But damn it, he is the only character in this entire story who honestly did his job. Was there a contract? Yes. Did he spin the gold? Yes. Did he save her life? 3 times. Did he break his word even once? No. And how was he treated? He got played. He got scammed. They used espionage to breach the terms of the deal and drove him to suicide. The bottom line? This isn't a fairy tale about good defeating evil. This is a story about how the elite, the king and queen, exploited the labor of a rightless outcast, the dwarf, seized the results of his work, the gold, and when the bill came due, they simply destroyed the creditor. Welcome to realpolitik. And this is where Rumpelstiltskin stops being a 19th century tale and becomes a terrifyingly relevant prophecy for us. We live in a world where this plot repeats every single day, only the scenery has changed. Today, Rumpelstiltskin isn't a gnome in the woods. He is the end-user license agreement, EULA, that you scroll past without reading before clicking Accept. You want gold right here, right now? You want the free service, the one-day delivery, the easy loan, the filter that makes you look perfect. Sure, take it, says the modern digital demon. Just give me access. Access to your contacts, your location, your microphone, your medical history. We, just like that miller's daughter, think, it'll be fine. I just need to solve this problem now. We hand over the necklace, our data. We hand over the ring, our privacy. And then, years later, when the algorithm knows more about us than we know ourselves, when our digital twins are sold on data exchanges, when our children are born into a world where their every move is logged on corporate servers, we act surprised. How do they know that? Why are they controlling my choices? We sold our firstborn, our future, for instant comfort. And when the collectors come for the debt, we don't have a magical messenger to find out their true name. Because the algorithm has no name. You can't shame it into stomping through the floor. The name. Remember this motif. The entire essence of the tale boils down to the power of the name. In the internet age, anonymity is the new superpower, and de-anonymization is death. Rumpelstiltskin died because he lost his privacy. He got hacked. The Queen conducted an OSINT investigation, ran him through the databases, and leaked his data. Today, we call that doxing. We are all playing this game. We hide behind nicknames, but the system always knows who we really are. And he who owns the name owns the power. So, what is this story really about? It's not about why you shouldn't brag, and it's not about memorizing names. It is about the fact that magic always has a price. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If someone offers you a miracle to turn the straw of your problems into the gold of success overnight, know this. You have already signed the contract, and the fine print at the bottom is written in blood. Your blood. Rumpelstiltskin didn't disappear. He just put on a suit, sat in a glass office, and is waiting for you to come to him in your moment of desperation. And believe me, this time, he won't give you a second chance to guess his name. Case number 1812 is closed. A story that began as a children's fairy tale turned out to be a chronicle of betrayal, poisoning, and the eternal human desire to get everything while paying nothing. But as we found out, the bill always comes due.